We have a problem.
I thought it was safe.
Your future has arrived.
What do you do? Are you sweating?
I am sweating.
I do have wooden shoes, though.
You know, as a Christian, I believe that we are superior to other life forms on our planet.
I love you very much, but I'm not sure that I want to spend money on that nonsense of yours.
You are a racist.
So I will give you Roe versus Wade if you give me Citizens United.
This is Han's classic diversion tactic.
There you go. Leadership.
Yeah.
Okay, so give me an example.
Our leader is has 49% approval rating. He's little over 4 points apart from Joe Biden in the polls, which is essentially meaningless at this stage. But I mean, meaningless on the one hand, but it's a very narrow spread. So it seems like he's doing pretty well.
So Obama had an average approval of 47.9, George W. Bush 49.4, Clinton of 55.1. George H.W. had an average approval of 60.9. He tops the list.
Yep.
Wow.
Trump's average so far is 40, but he's at 49 right now. Oh, and the Washington Post. Okay.
Hey, data is data. This shows job growth. The first chart shows average monthly job gains that obviously went haywire in 2008 and 2009. And then started picking up in the years, including the ones where Trump was president. Similar trend, basically, right? Gains were good. Here is the US unemployment rate. The unemployment rate goes down starting in, what is this on the graph, 2009, 2010, I guess, something like that. Steady decline. The third graph is...
It.
What do you mean you don't believe it? Here is the performance of the stock market since Obama entered office and when Trump entered office.
Well, look at that.
So you know the trend just continued. It's a little bit stronger, I'll admit to that, but it's also shakier because he would say stupid stuff and then things would start to be shaky. But the trend is still similar and upward, which is good. Americans on food stamps. Well, at least he has dealt with that a little bit, right? But the trend is still the same. So there's no break in any trends. US manufacturing output, you know, there's no significant change, is my message, at the point when he becomes president. And that is what I have a problem with, that it seems to be all about the way that it is being communicated. The gas price is a little better. But that's because OPEC has a problem. Government debt, same sort of situation. So there's nowhere in these graphs where you can, other than that it is being pinpointed for you, that without years you would be able to say, where does Trump get into office? It was a trend that was already underway. Consumer confidence, same type of thing. Granted, it doesn't go down, but the trend was already there. So well, I'm showing you graph after graph. But anyway, so my bottom line is, you know, the trends were already there. And unless you can show me sources that show me otherwise, the reason that you believe what you believe is because of the way that things are being communicated to you and not based on facts.
I will gladly concede if upon further research outside of the Washington Post that concurs.
Right. At the same time, I also agree that, you know, faith in the economy or in life around you and all of that is actually based on, you know, not necessarily on facts, right? You have to believe in order for the stock market to look good or for the economy to have a good feeling and all of that. It's not about facts and figures necessarily. If we all feel good about what's happening after the country reopens, then that's a good thing. If we all feel bad about it, then that's a bad thing. The situation is the same, but it's the way we feel that determines part of the outcome.
Yeah.
So Trump has done a better
good point.
job. Trump has done a better job in communicating to people that he is the best president in history. Whereas I'm looking at the facts and the figures behind that, and I'm seeing that he hasn't done anything to make things worse, but the trend that we were doing well was already underway. And he just inherited that, basically, and built further on it. Yes, he built further on it, but he didn't create it. So anyway, a true leader in your life, be it when you were young or when you were in school or when you were in work, what is to you a good leader?
A good leader in my life. John McClendon would be the first one to come to mind. John McClendon was my youth pastor in, I guess it was 1986 is when I first met John. And not just because John's a Christian and a pastor, but John is a true man of integrity. We all have our faults, and John's not sinless, blameless, faultless, but he's a very humble man. He's a very passionate man, a very ambitious man, a very fearless man when it comes to not just his faith, but also starting new ventures. He created a new church that it's called godwhy.com, godwhy.com. And the church was all about taking the questions that people have about Christianity and basically just trying to provide clear answers to those questions. And it was all geared toward non-Christians. And they played secular music for worship, but in place of the worship music that most churches play, they would play, depending on what the message was for that day. It might be, I Want a New Drug. If they're talking about drugs that day, I Want a New Drug by Huey Lewis and the News. The most out-of-the-box thinker in terms of the Christian world that I've ever met in my life, and fearless, and he got all kinds of criticism. How can you play that devil's music on Sunday morning? And just nonsense. So but John has always been a very humble guy, kind of like, I feel like you're humble, not in terms of means and ways or anything like that, but you have a self-awareness about yourself, you have a self-awareness about your humanity, and you love other humans. And John is just that kind of guy. He loves his fellow man. He's never preachy or you got to believe like I do or anything like that. He just lives his faith and is fearless in life. He's a great athlete. There's just so many things about him that I admire. Yeah. He would be the first one to come to my mind.
The topic came up because, I wanted to talk about leadership because...
Well, you have to answer now.
Yeah, I've thought about it too, and I find it hard to say that also. I guess I think of leadership or a good leader in my life in terms of if I have a question... If I have a question or I have a problem that I need to think about in terms of solutions, then some people come to mind. My dad may come to mind, but also what I notice a lot is somebody like Bob Moss comes to mind. And the reason that is because, he was able to create a group of people around him that for one reason or another were very loyal to him. I mention that all the time also to him, that I respect him for that, because loyalty is something that doesn't come easy, right? You have to deserve.
Absolutely.
Yep. So that was more my thinking of the question of leadership in relation to how we keep talking about the fact that this country is so divided, which is, the overarching topic of our podcast. And what we can possibly do or what needs to change in order to I guess, fix that, right? Because I think we both agree that it ideally should be fixed. It shouldn't be that the country is divided in one half saying one thing and another half saying another thing, or one half taking in one type of media, the other half taking in another type of media. I mean, we are one country and one people that should be striving for the same goal, because that's what people in a country should generally be doing, no?
I agree.
So, let's cut to the chase and say that I think that our current leader, and yes, also our previous leader possibly, and maybe some leaders going back for that matter, did not do enough to do what I think is something that every leader needs to do, which is to unite the people that he or she leads.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, and it gets amplified by the way that we have organized our media, for example, right? I mean, in this case, that's very clear how that works at the moment.
Yep.
And it gets amplified because there's a certain entertainment value to you and me sending each other texts that are clearly meant to basically tick each other off, right? That type of stuff. The idea that human life is superior to other life, which is something that humans, no matter what they are, Christians or whatever they are, humans have this thing that they think that their life form is superior to others. And I have a problem with that in general.
As a Christian, I believe that we are superior to other life forms on our planet. That does not mean that we can just go scorched earth and wipe them out like we did when we wiped up the buffalo. I mean, that's just awful.
Sure.
I'm like one of the biggest animal lovers, tree huggers, not the way that in what I call the extreme environmentalists are, but as far as my earth and nature, I adore it. I adore animals. I adore being at the campground and looking at the huge trees. I mean, going out west and seeing the beauty of our country. But I do believe that, and this is just how I believe, that it's okay for man to eat animals and kill animals.
Oh, sure.
For food. It's okay for man to use the forest to build structures. It's okay for man to build railways and roads, as long as we're responsible about it. And on top of that, have you ever been out west in this country? Have you truly ever driven through the western half of the United States? It is glorious, but
Sure.
it is vast. And if we think we are dominating this planet in a negative way, just go out there and stand in the middle of Montana, northwestern Montana, or in the middle of Nevada, northern middle section of Nevada, and tell me who's dominant. Because nature will eat you alive out there.
Well, I agree with you, and at the same time, there's such a thing as climate change, which I believe in. I don't know if you do, but that affects life in Montana as well. We have the most current example is the virus, right? That basically jumped to humans because we got too close to animals, as far as
No, we did not. No, we did not. That was
okay.
That came out of a lab, and
Oh,
absolutely. It wasn't some monkey or bat or snake that gave us the coronavirus. Come on.
You truly believe that, or are you just pulling my chain right now?
I do believe it.
Oh, geez. Well, then we need to have a whole other podcast that is going to take a long time to discuss this particular topic.
It may have originated, but it didn't jump out of a bat. Somebody eating it in a wet market.
Where is the proof or the indications that it came out of a lab?
Where are the proof or the indications that it came out of a monkey or a bat?
Well, because that has happened before. with viruses such as SARS and MERS? Same thing. Or did they also come out of a lab?
I don't know.
Aha. You should investigate.
Okay. Well, send me your data.
Then you're going to make fun of my sources. So, can't win. Anyway, Mr. Trump is not helping the definition that I have of a good leader by not doing enough to unite us as Americans and to unite us as a world in terms of always talking in terms of good and bad, or guilty of something.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
The guilty of something? Well, let's say the blaming of China for a virus, as an example. Which is fine, but then you need to offset that by also mentioning that the Spanish flu in 1918 originated from the U.S. But he doesn't mention that. So there's this imbalance, if you want.
How does that divide us as a country? He's not saying it came from Los Angeles or Chicago.
No, I mean, there's people that believe that it is warranted to blame China, and there's people that believe that it's not necessarily warranted to blame China.
But what's the big deal? Why is that a divisive statement for our country?
That he should represent both those groups of people, because both of those groups of people live in the United States under his leadership.
So we can't speak our minds and say what we believe because somebody's going to get offended that, oh, that's racist. You're blaming it on China. That's one of the biggest reasons Trump is in office, is the whole race card that has been overstated, overplayed.
I didn't use the race card. I just said that if there's two viewpoints to a topic, then I believe a good leader looks and explores both of those viewpoints, right?
Well, maybe he did, and maybe he's convinced that it's a China virus.
I still think that there's divisiveness that he amplifies, which is one of the reasons that he got elected, in my view, in the first place. It's not like he started it or anything. It was already going on, right? I don't know when it started, whether it goes all the way back to Richard Nixon or Ronald Reagan. I don't know for sure when all of that started, but it started a long time ago.
It started during the Clinton era.
Yeah, some people say that it started as a result of the Nixon presidency.
Maybe so. I was too young to go back that far, but I do know that during the Clinton administration is when right-leaning talk radio became prominent.
Right.
That's when Rush Limbaugh, when I was listening to Rush Limbaugh, became, one of the biggest talk show hosts on the planet. Then you had Sean Hannity, then you had Glenn Beck, then you had, name them, the list goes on and on and on, where this alt-right voice started coming up, questioning what in the heck's happening in Washington, okay? And you may, your tendency may be, well, okay, that's where it started because the right wanted to tear down the left, or wanted to tear down Washington or tear down the administration. But that voice, it felt like that voice was not being heard, okay? The country was moving more and more left, which, maybe there are some things that we should be more progressive on. But there are a lot of Americans that don't support abortion, that don't support, that love nature, love our environment, love our world, but don't just buy into climate change and we've got to do something, we've got to do, and the scientists say so, name it, on and on and on. There's so many of these issues that so many of us don't just take for granted.
Right.
And so as time goes on, and this is just my assessment, as time goes on, you have Clinton, then you have Bush, and then you have Obama. And as time goes on, it gets wackier and wackier, you know? And look where the Democratic Party is now, how far left they've gone. And under the Obama administration, the dividing of the country on the basis of race and class warfare, it just became sickening. His response to ISIS and terrorism was scary to me. It was, you're talking about leadership and talking about having security and hope and faith and man, am I going to be okay in leadership? I was scared to death under Obama because of ISIS, because they're over there cutting heads off and slitting throats and burning people in cages, just the most awful stuff I've ever seen in my life. And he doesn't have the balls to sit up there and call it what it is.
Well,
I
think he does. He just didn't act.
And he didn't act.
The impression exists, probably also with you, that Trump has made a difference in, let's say, the Middle East or in North Korea or, well, China. He hasn't really advanced any of that agenda because he hasn't addressed it. But whereas with Obama, who also did nothing when it comes to North Korea or with ISIS, I agree with that, then it is being viewed as he did nothing and you were scared. So I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand the difference, because in both cases, the president of the United States did nothing.
But Trump has done something with ISIS. Okay, he has definitely tried to diplomatically engage Rocket Man. He's tried to engage Rocket Man. Not in a, hey buddy, we're gonna hang out and drink a beer and be pals. I think that's his approach, but his approach is to try to get him to the table to talk about this stuff, and that's more than any president has done in the recent history.
Do you remember what happened on Fox and on your side of the political aisle when Obama was asked in one of the presidential debates whether he would, pick up the phone and talk to Kim Jong-un, and he said yes, and he said yes, I will sit down and talk to him. You should look that up.
Okay. Did he?
He said that he would sit down and talk to him.
But did he?
And that caused a storm. There's a reason why he didn't do that. It was part of his strategy that you can agree with or not. But my point is that when Obama said this in 2008, he was burned at the ankles by Fox News, including Sean Hannity, I think, at the time. I think he was already at Fox News at the time. And then when Trump announced that he was going to send love letters to Kim Jong-un, he was applauded by your people. And I find that odd.
I hate that's hypocrisy, and I hate it.
Right. Okay. So then we agree with that. I mean, I understand that in leadership, you can have two leaders say one and the same thing, and in time, it can be perceived differently. I understand that. But in this particular case, it was clearly already part of this, left-right kind of a war that we have going on in this country that I believe is counterproductive. And it actually makes us lose the global competition, right? To countries that are unified, like a China or maybe even a Russia, for that matter.
Wait a minute. Did you just say that?
That is also a characteristic of good leadership, which is to look at all aspects and all angles, and not look at one particular problem in an isolated manner.
Yeah, give me an example. What are you talking about now? Hang on, you gotta slow down, because we got way off track. Which, again, for you listeners out there, this is Han's classic diversion tactic. All right, anytime he gets backed into a corner on a debate or a discussion, he changes the subject into every other topic he can possibly try to win on.
You haven't even backed me into a corner on leadership. We have agreed on leadership, haven't we?
Pretty much, yeah.
So
So now back to your point of
my point is, and it does all come together, that a good leader tries to not only unify the people that he or she leads, but also tries to convince those people of what it is that they should be doing in order to collectively march forward. I guess that's the best way I can say it. And I said that differently earlier, and I said something about competing with China and Russia. But what I meant to say was, that the biggest problem I have, and yes, I'll give that to you, that it's not just because of Trump, because Trump is simply, and in my view at least, a symbol of that problem. It started much earlier, is that we as Americans don't seem to agree anymore on what the way forward is for us as a united country. And that is a problem, because as we are quarreling and feeling entitled and continuing to facilitate what we so argue with, being buying all our stuff from China, we're not getting anywhere. And our leader is not helping us to figure out a way forward that does what we all agree with that we should be doing. Which is one of the reasons why I came to this country, Hunter, why I became an American. We all agree, except we're not acting as such, right. And we're not encouraged by our leader to act in a way that gets us there.
I don't disagree with you that our leaders should try to bring the country together. And you're right. Trump has definitely punched hard against the left. And that's half of our country, or at least if you talk about right and left, at least half the country is on a little bit on this side or far on this side, and half the country is a little bit far on this side, or really far on this side.
Yep.
So, and he's definitely punched hard on the left side. My first question was going to be, why does that standard of unifying the country have to start now? It should start now. It should be a standard of all presidents and all leadership.
Right.
But it was horrendous under the Obama administration.
I agree.
Okay. And I think the reason you have what you have now is because of your former president.
I still think that somebody like Donald Trump is using the division to further his own, I guess, popularity among the people that back him up and may re-elect him in November. So he is actively he is actively saying things in the way that he communicates. Doesn't necessarily mean that he acts that way, but in the way that he communicates and the types of communications that he uses and the language that he uses, he is deliberately trying to further the divide as opposed to bringing us together.
That's a tough one, because I always question in the back of my mind, is he really for real beliefs now, or is this just, he's a celebrity, he's very powerful, very wealthy, and this was something that he had to cross off his bucket list, and he did it, and that's his motive for keeping, for what's the word? Not patronizing. Well, maybe that's the word. Patronizing criticizing the right wing because he's smart enough to see that we're fed up with the media, we're fed up with the shenanigans on the left, and we're fed up with not being able to have a voice. We're good, decent people. We love people. We love our planet. We love our fellow man. We love our country. And because we own a gun, we're a redneck, that's just going to blow up, go in and kill, do a mass shooting. Because we're pro-life, we hate women. Because of this, we're Christian. We're fed up, and we can't say anything because everything is politically correct. You have to talk a certain way now. We're fed up with that. You know what? Our voice matters too. And we're not hateful people. And because we have an opinion, hear our opinion. Don't just immediately shut me down and say, oh, you're a racist because you said that, or you're a homophobe because you said this, or, that stuff had been percolating for a long time. But for once, we finally have a that is willing to stand up and look at the media on TV and not be embarrassed by it and say, you know what? Take a hike. You're full of crap,
So you're basically making my point, which is that you now have a figurehead, which is great, but nothing that figurehead does helps to bring us together or have the conversation.
Well, let's talk about that real quickly.
And that's what a true leader would do.
Okay, but let's talk about that. He hasn't been able to lead, and in fact, I think, considering the circumstances, he's led very well. I don't like sometimes the theatrics of his stuff. It's cringeworthy at times.
How is it that with a Republican House and a Republican Senate in the first 2 years of his administration, it still is being portrayed by you that he wasn't able to govern when he had his whole posse around him?
Don't go there, because he governed very well. The economy was great. The African American
there's no wall. Obamacare is still in place.
No, those are your things. Those are your things. No.
The economy was accelerating at the same rate under the Obama administration. He has nothing to do with that.
Economy is doing great. Joblessness was at an all-time low. African American joblessness, his approval rating amongst African Americans was at an all-time high. ISIS was completely annihilated. I don't give him all the credit for that, but at least he had, he sent a tough message that we're not going to put up with this stuff, right? Our military is stronger. That's part of the reason why ISIS is not who they are anymore.
How is our military stronger?
He's reinvested in our military.
Show me the data.
There are numerous accomplishments. Despite the fact that he's been drugged through the mud all 4 years into all these controversies, and and the media has been on the side of Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi. He's had an enormous success. Okay. Do I like everything that comes out of the man's mouth? No. Is he crude sometimes? Yes, he is.
Is your drinking water safer? Is your air safer? Is air pollution due to car emissions improved?
I don't think it's any worse.
Well, he has gotten rid of a lot of those regulations, right? Because they had the name Obama on them.
Well, you know what? And again, I don't trust everything that comes out of the climate change movements. Scientists' mouths. Okay, I think there's a big political, financial agenda behind that, and I want to protect the earth as much as anybody, but I don't like when it's politicized and it's become a
No, but I
political.
mean, to me, it's interesting that when you talk about his accomplishments, that you'll mention the military, but I don't hear anything about education or healthy drinking water or healthy air for your kids to live in. I find that interesting.
You know what? And go back and check me on this, but prior to the election, and I think this crosses borders, but in the environment, as far as a hot button topic for the average American, was very low on the list of priorities. The priorities were economy, national security. Those were the two main ones. I don't know but I do remember, and check me on this, but I do remember environmental concern was very low. All right?
Among what, the average American?
Among the average American.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we don't govern going by what the average American wants because they don't know what they want.
Well, that's where you and I differ, because the average American does govern. We are the government.
Oh, okay.
Under our Constitution, we are the government.
Well, you
But-
elect your leaders. I agree with that. That is in the Constitution, but it's not in the Constitution that you and I govern, because that would not be a good idea. And once you elect your officials, then they do their job.
Well, but we hold them accountable.
Oh, yeah, sure. Right. That is what Comey tried to do. Yes.
And that's where we, the people, have gotten completely exasperated with Washington thinking they are kings and monarchs and the King's Council, and they can do whatever they want, and the media just lapping them, along the way. That's why you have, I'm just telling you, that's why you have your president. I don't think I'm I'm not an unloving guy. I don't hate my neighbor. I don't hate people of color. I don't hate Latinos. I don't want violence. I'm glad Trump's in office. Okay. My daughter is gay. I love this country. I love my fellow man. I love this world. But that's why I still voted for Trump. That may be weird, but I voted for the man because I'm tired of the elitist, highly educated, we know better than you, you're stupid, just shut up and listen to us. I'm tired of the race baiters. I'm tired of the class warfare. He may, at the end of the day, be one. But right now, he is acting as if he's not. He's acting as if.
Well, I mean,
that he cares that there's another voice out here and they're being silenced because of political correctness.
I don't know if it's being silenced or that you just didn't get the majority for a while until you got so fed up that you elected him. That's possible. But, all that I understand, because all that is what led to Donald Trump being in the White House. In my view, he used that sentiment in a very smart way to get elected. I mean, he figured out, and I still don't understand how he managed to do that from his golden toilet in his Trump Tower in the middle of Manhattan, but he figured out what the sentiments were in the country. I have to commend him for that, for sure, because his timing was right. But all I'm saying is that with all those things that you're saying, which I respect, what does it solve by having Trump in the White House? What exactly does it solve, other than that you now have a figurehead from which you believe that your voice is being heard? Which, by the way, I would have a whole other question about how that translates into your life being better, but that's a whole other podcast, I suppose.
Life was great until the coronavirus, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's lots of victories for all of us to celebrate under his ministry.
I don't agree, because, my kids didn't get proper education, and when I broke a leg, I was paying through the nose and ran the risk of going bankrupt.
That's not his fault, Hans. That's not his fault.
Well,
That's
so it wasn't going great. Just because the stock market is going up doesn't mean that things are going great, right? The underlying structure needs to be improved.
But Obama didn't fix that for you either.
No, I agree. I
Okay.
agree.
So
Right.
why is it Trump's fault?
Because you're giving Trump credit for things going great, and I'm saying that they weren't going great, just like they weren't going great under Obama.
Okay, but that's not his fault. So you shouldn't be calling him a bad leader because you didn't get what
He ran on improving the infrastructure in America. What has he done to improve the infrastructure in America? Nothing.
you know. I don't recall him running on improving the infrastructure in America.
Then you need to look that up. Then you don't remember what he ran on. You probably only remember that that speech that he held about Mexicans. Then
I think he ran on making America great again. It did include national pride, not in the way that the left wants to spin that. In terms of, we're Nazis, and this is the motherland, and blah blah blah, and all that stuff, which the left has tried to paint. It wasn't that. It was, we've become apologetic for being Americans. We've become, we used to be looked to as a country that was strong global neighbors. And that's waning, okay? Our military has been depleted. That's waning. We're going to build that back up, just like under Ronald Reagan. I'm sure, if you probably looked into your Dutch military, it's probably one of the strongest for its size, okay? You're not complaining about that.
I am, because I would if at the same time, we cannot pay for Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security. Then you're spending your dollars in the wrong way.
Well, then why hasn't previous administrations and governments allocated the money and not squandered it the way that every administration has throughout time? Why haven't they allocated the money and spent the money in the proper way?
Yeah, because they are all afraid to not get reelected, right? I mean, that is the problem. You have to do what people want you to do, and that's why I kept saying. That's why I was saying a few minutes ago, people don't know what they want or what's good for them. You don't need that kind of pressure when you govern.
You got every right. You got every politician. Every bill that comes across, they're paying for their pet project. Instead of going to the right place. And how many billions of dollars have been poured into the public education system, and it's not working?
So why doesn't that get improved? Why is it that in this country that we claim is so great and rich and whatever, that we cannot get the basics right? I mean, it's not like that is the case everywhere in the world. In a lot of other countries, they have that well organized and well controlled. And there is no pork in laws, and there's no lobbyists, and there's no, agenda for re-election. There's just governments that are doing things to further advance their country.
Yep. Amen. You and I agree. Lobbyists and pork and that kind of stuff, I don't care what my people on the right have said in support of that stuff. I disagree.
Right.
It's destroying our country.
So I will give you Roe versus Wade if you give me Citizens United.
You got it.
All right. See, we are good leaders. There we go.
I thought it was safe.
Your future has arrived.